it's time to get going here. It's 6:30.
Carrie coming? Reed?
Yeah, we don't.
She's supposed to be here.
Okay, can we start for the preliminaries without her?
Let's see, we gotta.
We gotta have a quorum.
Sure,
Can
I see
we?
no reason not to.
Okay, there's nothing legal in this part of it that I know of. Okay, roll call, please.
Virginia Brown,
Present.
Angela Cameron,
Present.
Truman G, David Lamont,
Here.
Tracy Remark,
Here.
Timothy Kostadakis,
Here.
Daniel Webster,
Present.
Teresa Doan, and Gary Libby.
Here.
Would we all stand, please?
Approval. You had
I'm
action.
sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Ignore me.
Okay.
For
Ignore
the
me.
pledge, and Tracy, if you would read us in our invocation, I
Ignore
would
me.
appreciate it, please. Yes, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, we just thank you for bringing us here together safely. We just ask that you open our minds and hearts, that we are wise in our discussion and our decisions, and we realize that we represent those who are not here and speak for them. Amen.
Thank you, Tracy. You may be seated.
I almost said in the name of the Lord. I almost said in Jesus' name. Oh.
I would like to have an approval of the minutes of June the 8th, 2011. Are there any corrections?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It passes. I will preside through tonight, and then I would like you to decide who you would like to have as your chair and vice chair for next meeting. I prefer not to be chair again. I think that someone else can do a better job than I have done. And I would like to let you think about it for a month, and then we will vote on it next time. Teresa's on vacation until the 21st, so I would like to have her here instead of doing it this evening, if that's okay with the board. Is okay? All right.
Well, actually, I just have one question. Is that a problem, not having a chair until the meeting starts?
You're the chair tonight, and then at the beginning of the next meeting, we can take a vote as to who the new chair will be, and that
Right.
person can start the
I
meeting
just
in the
wanted to
beginning.
make sure. Okay.
Okay. The police report, please. Captain Hoffman.
Good evening. Well, we're trying to make it through the summer. Beginning right at the beginning of summer, probably the tail end of May, our CompStat reporting period was up significantly. We had, let me start by saying crime overall in the city is still down 13% from last year. Our goal is 10, so we're still above our goal, which is good. We're down 6% in our district. We suspected that come summertime we were going to lose a little bit of ground with school being out and a lot more people in town. And of course we were correct. We started off with a 39% spike in crime at the beginning of May and through May. And we've been chipping away at it. Then the following CompStat period, we were down to a 28% increase, and right now we're setting at a 6% increase. Now that's from CompStat period to CompStat periods, so for every 2 weeks. So for the last 3 or 4, it's been up, but it's coming back down. So we're heading in the right direction. We're just trying to get to August 22nd, you know, when everybody goes back to school. So, and then we're going to gain ground again. But I'm very confident that we're going to meet our goal at the end of the year of a 10% overall crime reduction in the city. We've changed some deployment strategies in the CRA, the Main Street and Atlantic CRAs. One of the things that we've done in the last few weeks, we changed some deployment strategies, and the reason being is that when things started to kind of go up, we started having some issues down in the Ocean Walk area. We had some robberies, we had some car breaks, we had a lot of issues. So we changed what we were doing as far as the detail officers assigned down there. One of the things that we want to do, more people on the boardwalk, we needed to increase visibility. So what we implemented was the same thing that we do during Bike Week. All the police officers that work down there in the CR details now are required to wear traffic vests. So they're obviously more visible in the crowds. The other thing that we did is originally when this detail was started, we gave the officers the option to either walk, ride a bike, or ride a Segway. We've taken the walking option away. There's just way too much ground to cover between Breakers Park and the band shell. Sometimes they have to go across the street and a little farther out to address problems. So now they only ride bikes or Segways to make them more mobile, to able to get up and down the boardwalk in those areas a lot quicker. So, so far so good. Since we've changed that deployment strategy, things have certainly calmed down tremendously on the boardwalk. We've had very few issues. I've also redeployed the crime suppression team for the last couple of months. Actually, coming into the summer, they were concentrating mainly on the west side of the river, which are patrol zones 56 through 58, which is everything between the river and the railroad tracks. They were very aggressive. We gained a lot of ground, but as we were gaining ground there, we started losing ground in the core area. So they've been redeployed, and they've been working solely in that core area, this Main Street South Atlantic CRA. So that, coupled with changing the way that the officers are patrolling the CRA, you know, it's working. We obviously still have some glitches here and there. You know, Saturday there was a shooting at the Burger King. That person's in custody. We've now planned an operation for not only that area, but the Coliseum, which is also a thorn in our side over on Beach Street. And we've convinced the property owners there at Burger King to hire a detail now on the weekends. So far so good.
Any questions for Captain Hoffman?
That's what I was going to bring up, is the Burger King. I mean, it's been nuts over there in that park, right in that area. I was down there when the shooting happened. It's just nuts over there.
Well, I talked to Mr. Politis today, and he is not getting a lot of cooperation from the business.
No.
He is actually the one that's hiring the detail,
Mm-hmm.
and we've run into a lot of obstacles with them as well. They seem to not really be concerned with the loitering in that area.
No.
So.
And what can we do about the kid because it's that group that goes to the Burger King, the same group that hangs out right there at the walkway, underneath the walkway.
The Dolphin Park
Yeah, that
area,
Dolphin Park
yes.
area there. And that's the same. And they tend to congregate, so that they migrate from there to the Burger King. When they get chased off Burger King, then they go to Coates. And
Correct.
then, so they're, you know,
And
it's the same group of kids.
Absolutely, and we're chasing them around. It's the same group of juveniles that have been plaguing us all summer,
Yeah.
and they're all kids, and they've all been arrested. They've all been charged. We were successful in getting one of them on an ankle monitor.
Yeah, some of them have ankle monitors.
Yeah.
In their
But you know, juveniles are tough to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they just.
Okay,
You know,
great. I don't know.
so the best that we can do right now is to put them on ankle monitoring, which has helped with a few things, but it's still a problem. I mean, it's definitely a problem. So we chase them, we arrest them, and there they are.
David?
Are all of those areas well lit? You know, as I drive by A1A and I look to the left heading north, there seems to be really no direct lights in that Dolphin Park. There's some ambient lights that come into there, but it's pretty dark. It's considerably darker than the light levels in the parking lot. Have we thought of ramping up the lights where these kids are congregating? You know, they tend not to like a well-lit area.
True. Sure. I'm up for anything, you know, anything that helps us out, you know, with increased video surveillance. One of the problems we've had in the parking garage is the lack of security cameras in the garage. They only
Yeah.
have one on one level, and it doesn't record. It doesn't do us a lot of good. I'd like to see more of those things. It's convincing the people to do it. We're having an issue right now at the Coliseum. We're trying to work on something to get cameras installed in those back parking lots, but it's all about money.
You know, for years, one of the complaints that we've heard at city commission meetings and heard at other advisory board meetings were the low light levels on Main Street and the low light levels in parking areas adjacent to Main Street. Maybe we could start here at Dolphin Park and start ramping up the light levels. I don't think anybody's against brighter lights in the redevelopment
It's just the
area.
turtle problems.
Not across the street
Yeah,
there.
I
Yeah.
think we're fine.
Across A1A.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know whether it would take a motion here or whether it's just policy to start seeing how we can increase the light levels, especially in the core area.
Sure.
If I could just jump in and say right now on lighting levels, we're already looking at Main Street, Public Works is. And we are also, we're not looking at each and every area. We're looking at some improvements between Main Street and Auditorium along Noble and Wild Olive, which will provide some additional lighting and light it up. I don't know of anybody working on that Dolphin Park, and we will pass that along. That may involve the county on that particular piece, and but I will take that information and see what we can do and have a report back to you next time. Okay?
David?
On the cost and everything, it's something maybe you can get together with Ben Johnson or whoever and work something out to put all the cost of police in that area onto Mr. Politis. Seems a bit unfair, seeing how, you know, it was a accumulation of the Ocean Center, the parking garage, the Ocean Walk, that brings this crowd. We had an alarm go off at our store at 2 a.m. July 3rd night, second night, whatever it was, and I drove up A1A at 2 a.m. and it was scary. I mean, and they're not just at the Burger King; they're across the street. They're at the parking garage and all that. So we have between Daytona, the Sheriff's Department, and the Beach Patrol, and the Beach Patrol is doing absolutely nothing at night. I don't know why the three organizations there can't get together and put them on the streets in that area with some type of interlocal agreement. Because, like I said, it just seems all unfair to put all that policing cost on top of Mr. Politis. He runs a great business down there. To have him paid for all the extra police is I think is wrong. And when we have three organizations right there that could in my mind could do the whole thing.
You're correct. I agree, but then you start getting into politics as far as who's going to police.
Well,
what.
I mean,
that's way above my pay grade.
Well, you know, one of the things we're going to go through tonight is the Z-zone thing. It's about time the city and the county put their politics aside if we're ever going to get anything done. And we need, maybe you can pass this on to Chief, and maybe, because he doesn't seem to have any problem speaking up, and maybe we could somehow get a task force together with those three organizations and get something more policing done over there, so it's not falling on one businessman over there.
One thing that we are doing right now, and Saturday, for instance, is we're given grant money every year by the federal government, and we use that money to run these operations. And every weekend this summer, we've been running what we call these JAG operations, and it's 5 extra officers and a supervisor. And for the last month, this is the area that they've been concentrating in. It's been this core area. But, you know, it's a big area. It's crowded. You've been down there. There are a lot of people in town. And, you know, when you start splitting your time between that and the parking garage and all along the boardwalk, and then you got to get down to the Seabreeze area and then all up along 51 zone, which is all the North End hotels. I mean, it's a lot for them to cover. But, of course, we'd love to see more guys out there.
Well, that's what I think. If you could get, hopefully Chief Chitwood could spearhead this thing and get the three organizations. Like I said, the Beach Patrol, what they do at night, I have a clue. And, you know, they're all law enforcement officers, and do some type of interlocal agreement for that core tourist area through the summer. And to have a 39% increase in crime because it's summertime in our core tourist area is not your fault. Believe me, I know it's not your fault, but it's something that we need to address, or this plan here is going to go absolutely nowhere. And like I said, we have 3 huge police organizations right there, and I think we could probably put in better use of. You guys get the politics and put your heads together and work something out.
Agreed.
I have a question. Coliseum, Beach Street. Are you talking about the parking areas that are actually for all of that, the downtown parking area that's on the backside, not on Beach Street?
Yes, ma'am.
And just out of curiosity, what does video cost?
I don't know. I really don't. It all depends on the quality of the system that you get. The IT people are here could probably give you a cost because I know they deal with it a lot. But
has that been brought up to? Okay, I see a hand over here.
Let me jump in, because this came up the other day at our downtown board meeting.
Okay, that's what I'm,
And we don't know what cost, but we
Uh-huh.
are inquiring about what it might take to take those public lots that we have. It just happens to be behind the Coliseum. That's not our property. That's private property. Looks like a public parking lot, but it's not.
that part that everyone drives through and parks in is
Sure.
only,
It's owned by Burgoyne Properties, so it's really up to them, to install the camera system. But we've had a pretty good relationship with them in the past with
Right.
a lot of other properties that they have, and I don't see it being an issue.
yeah, because I would also think in terms of the lighting, I mean, there's an awful lot of pole lighting, that could be ramped up as well back there, and there
Right.
aren't any turtles on the mainland.
I
think
So-
I'll find one, Tracy. I guarantee
Yeah, I know, they'll find one.
We'll pass that along I'll call the Burgoyne representative. We have, like you said, a very good relationship
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Maybe, maybe this is a time to start the LED relighting of the city. You've got some areas. The lights behind Beach Street are not light levels that are conducive to people using those parking lots. They're just not. It's too dark. I think we all know that. I don't know who chose those light levels or what the plan was, but it certainly hasn't been successful, because it's a deterrent to people parking there rather than having people park there.
Don't disagree, and whether it's on the beach side or downtown, we're looking at and evaluating right now both the different LED lights, the photometrics of that, and you got to put in more poles. I mean, there's not much there, so you need to get coverage, because if you put those shadows in, I mean, it doesn't help a lot when you're in a light and then there's a shadow in a light. So getting the right coverage will help everybody, so the police can see through from one end to the other.
One of the other issues that we had down there is that the Coliseum also canceled the detail officer. So that was another thing that certainly hurt us.
canceled what?
They stopped paying for the outside detail officer on the busy nights that they were having. Every Mondays they do teen night. We have issues with that, obviously, and then
They're-
Saturday nights are big nights. So
They're not required to?
No, and if they don't have the money, we can't make them. So, and that's what it boils down to is finances, I guess. So we're doing our best to supplement that with on-duty resources. But if I have to send somebody on duty down there to babysit
Right.
the bar, that's taken
Right.
away from
No, I
from that
agree.
patrol zone. So that's certainly hurt as well, because we certainly didn't have as many problems when we had the detail. Razzles is a prime example. They hire detail almost every night of the week. We have very, very few problems from Razzles. So it definitely works.
If I may,
I thought they
and
were
this is more
required.
perhaps for Reed and legal, as to perhaps if we have problem areas, why can't we have an ordinance which imposes requirement for detail officers and such be there once you have, a certain number of incidents within a period of time or something, that mandates that they provide
Right.
the officers, or they're going to get shut down. I mean, it seems pretty simple to me.
Well, there are events, we do require detail officers for events, but when you get to the point where the Coliseum was, where they just weren't paying anymore, the city's continuing to foot the bill, so, we can't do it either.
But they're
That's, I presume,
continuing to-
because we don't have any
Right.
ordinance or regulation requiring them to do so. So if we have a situation where we have a coliseum or other business that's creating a certain number of calls within a period of time, then they should be required to provide a detail officer, or they lose their license to do business. End of story.
See, I thought we had something.
There's a police
There-
user fee where
there
if
is.
there's too many calls for
Right.
service, they get
Right.
charged. There's also under nuisance abatement if
Right.
there's,
Right,
3 and, I don't know what the time period is,
right.
3 and 6 months. He used to be on
We
the
haven't
nuisance
gotten to
abatement.
that point with them yet, nor have we gotten to the point of a police user fee. It's not that there's a volume, but it's the significance of the events that are happening.
Well-
We may only have one event, but for instance, 2 Saturdays ago, we had a shooting at the Coliseum. Now, it's been quiet because we've obviously ramped up the patrols there, but, we can only support that for so long.
Well,
so.
maybe it shouldn't be based upon a certain number of calls within a period, but if there's a certain type of event, such as a nightclub doing business,
that's conducive. You know, Razzles is providing. If the other ones are going to have a certain amount of people within their establishment, then maybe they should be required and they're going to operate at certain hours. Is it an hour issue? Is it happen at 9 or is it happen at 2 a.m.? When's that going on? You know, if there's a situation where the police can say, hey, this is the problem, this is the time periods when we're having these problems, then maybe the city can look at it and say, hey, we need to impose some additional burdens on those businesses to pay for the potential problems to avoid them so we don't have to deal with it. You know, if there's something like that, I think that
makes
should be
sense.
looked at.
Sure.
See, I think one of the problems is where if it's a call to the business, it's one thing, but if it's a problem that happens outside the business, it's not necessarily as tough to tie the issues that with Razzles, I know Razzles was an issue that it took them a little while to convince them that they needed to hire a detail, and there's a little bit of pressure put on them for that. But and as far as the cameras and stuff, I mean, they're not that expensive anymore. I've got an infrared camera in my parking lot that the digitals. Well, I don't know if you know, there was the issue that happened at Daytona Lagoon, where the one officer got ran over.
Yes.
Well, that was my parking lot, and I didn't know that it happened. I was off that day, and I went in. I burned the DVD up. I got the incident on there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those cameras that 2 years ago when I installed them, they were a couple $100 each. Now they're like down to like $100 a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just everybody wants to step to the table. But the county, when we approached the county years ago about putting in their logic is if they put cameras in the parking garage and they don't have anybody to monitor the cameras and something happens, then they have an added liability supposedly.
Reed, has there been any discussion about the need for increased police presence in an E-zone? I mean, if it's going to be an entertainment zone and we're going to push for mature, not adult entertainment, but bars and restaurants and that will be open late, are we building into the plan the anticipated cost for extraordinary police as well, or is that just comes with the turf? That's a cost to the Redevelopment Trust Fund.
Well, it may not be a cost to the Redevelopment Trust Fund. I can't tell you where, but they'll certainly, when you add a lot more business and activity, there'll be some of that. On the other hand, some of the things that we have problems with now won't be present right in the E-zone. I think our concern right now, and this started with the boardwalk operations that we have been paying additional funds for. And as we spread out and we're into Main Street now, are we still keeping a patrol out there on
the weekends? Yes.
On the weekends. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to deal with each of these problems and spread out with the idea that if we can continue to move out and protect the most important part of our tourist area and do the normal policing that you do in any residential neighborhood that in that area, but if we can concentrate those efforts, and I think with success, we'll just have to see how the E-zone develops. But you protect your investments, and if we need additional people out there, the police will figure that out. They'll communicate with us if there's a need, and then we'll get something done. Hopefully, it's just going to be the opposite. The more lighting, the more people, the more activity will actually drive a lot of that out. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean just out of that particular area, but it'll just disappear with all the other things we're doing in code enforcement. It should change the whole dynamic of what's happening in those adjacent neighborhoods. We'll see.
Well, unfortunately, when you bring large groups of people, the riffraff tends to come in to feed off of them. So it's kind of, it's a catch-22. You improve the areas around, but at the same time, criminals go to where the people are. Or hoodlums go to where the people are.
And that I understand, but it might be harder for them to access that area if we're improving and raising the quality of the housing and the people who are living in those houses in the immediate area. So it's going to be harder for people to get back and forth into that area. So.
In another 20 years, maybe. But.
Yeah.
I just have a follow-up question on this Coliseum, and I'm thinking teen night. It's a bar nightclub. How can they have teenagers?
They don't serve alcohol on that Monday night, and they allow it 18 and up.
18 and up.
Razzles does it too on Thursday nights.
18 and under.
18
Oh,
and,
it's right, that's right,
so
that's
it's
right.
a,
It's
it's a
18 and up,
rave,
so
it's
yeah.
what used to be called.
It's a rave, yeah, there's
It's
no
a rave.
alcohol. There's no alcohol,
And
yes.
disc jockey stuff, and
Right.
so they just do a teen night.
Right.
Okay. I'm like, how is that happening? Okay.
Also,
They drink outside in the parking lot.
one of my
Yeah,
renters
they
is
drink in the parking lot.
manager down on the boardwalk. And they had an incident where someone was drunk and they took him off the go-karts and they wanted their money back and they said no. Well, she called 911 and asked for a policeman. And when the policeman finally got there 25 minutes later, he said he was down on, just standing down by the Ferris wheel or on down further. And she said they hadn't even called him. As soon as he got the call from dispatch, they came down there. Well, that is an issue that I don't think you're aware of. And Andy was really complaining about it to me. She said,
You're talking
"You're
about the
on."
response time, or?
Yeah, well, from the time she called till the policeman got the call
Actually
from
got the
dispatch was over 25 minutes, according to.
Right.
She said, "Why were you so long getting here?" And he said, "I just got the call."
Right.
So that's something you might.
Everything is prioritized when it comes into the dispatch center,
Right.
which you all know is controlled by the sheriff's office.
I know that.
It comes in, it's given a priority 1 through 5. Okay, now it all depends on the calls for service that are going on at the time. Now it depends on how the call is typed in by the call taker. Now if it's typed in as a civil complaint, which it sounds like it might have been, it goes in as a civil complaint. It's going to
Go way
be,
down.
they're not even required to call the supervisor that they're calling.
Right.
They're holding the call until 30 minutes has elapsed on a priority 5 call, which that probably was. So what'll happen is if they're busy and they don't have anybody to send, it's going to have to hold. And then when 30 minutes goes by, then they'll inform the supervisor, oh, by the way, I'm holding this call and this call. And it's not uncommon for us to hold calls all night long. So usually at shift change, we come in and we're holding 5 or 6 calls for service. So it's all about how it's prioritized and what's available at the time,
Yeah.
But
Well,
she's saying that there was an officer available that dispatch just didn't call for
That's
25
exactly
minutes.
what I'm
And
saying.
I told you,
Yeah.
we do not control the dispatch
No.
center. It's the sheriff's
Okay.
office. If they don't call us, we don't know.
I realize that, but is there something that we can do?
Well, you guys know the battle that we've been doing with that for
Yeah.
several years, and we've tried to break away from that, and it does not look like we'll be able to do that. So we'll have to. In fact, you guys know the RCC, which controls Port Orange and Edgewater and everything. They are dissolving, and everybody's is going to the county. So, we've tried. I know they've explored it going back with our own dispatch center, but right now we just can't do it because of the cost.
Yes, Kim.
This is more for Reed. Listening to the problems that just brought up here tonight, maybe we can put some kind of workshop together where we sit down, you call it a meeting, whatever you want to do, and work out these problems so we don't have a 25-minute lag time between something that they may think is a low-level call when it actually it's not. When you got a drunk down there, he could explode any second. But if it's going to the sheriff's department now, which has always been a problem. I mean, I had a call back on South Peninsula. It took them forever to get there a while back. But we're using the sheriff's department now. We have, like I said, the sheriff's department, Daytona, and the Beach Patrol. Why don't you set up something, Reed, and let's get the people involved or in charge of these organizations. Let's get them in a room, let's sit down and see if we can't work something out for that area. Like Timmy said, if we're going to have an E-zone, we're going to bring all these tourists and guests and all that to this area. You're going to bring more problems to the area. And right now, we can't. We're having a tough time. These guys are having a tough time handling it, and these guys do a bang-up job. They need help, and like I said, there's 2 other organizations that could probably fill in pretty easy.
Madam Chairman, what about designating the E-zone area or the redevelopment area a priority 1, no matter what happens in there? You're in the core tourist area, you have a drunk, it could break out into a really violent situation right in the middle of a crowded area. Have we explored geographically trying to designate with the sheriff, since our police have to do the response?
Correct.
Any call from that area having a 1 or a 2, not a 5, because it's it might be a dispute.
Well, unfortunately, when the dispatch center gets it, they get the call. To them, it doesn't. They don't really. The priority's not put on the location. It's put on the call.
Yeah, that's my point.
And the problem is, I like the idea, but this is the problem we run into. So we're going to make everything that's in this area going to get immediate priority by the police department. Well, what about the people that live in 55 zone? How come I can't be the first priority for a police officer? How come they get it? And that's
Well,
the problem we're going to run into.
outside of heavy tourist areas, which are pedestrian by nature, where you have groups of people in a residential area, I think the regular code could apply. But we're talking about a high visibility area full of people where you can have an inflammatory incident and have a riot break out. And I think if we're going to ramp up this area and value it up and increase the number of people down there, we're going to have to anticipate how to handle things like that. Something tells me maybe looking at some mixed system where geography plays a role might be way to our advantage. I mean, I think it certainly would have made the 25 minutes a lot less than 25 minutes, especially if there was an officer within yelling distance, you know, walkie-talkie distance. I know you've discussed probably every perambulation, every ramification, but if the E-zone is going to be a serious endeavor, we have to guarantee the safety of the streets.
Agreed.
And I think that's one of our, you know, that's one of the things we advise the city commission on. And maybe looking as we move toward this E-zone, as this becomes more of a reality, the district shapes up a little more, maybe geography can play a role
And
in response time.
Timmy?
okay.
I think one of the things is, and I mean, the boardwalk has a detail, and we talked about Paul Politis hiring the detail. I did it because we're on the same block. We did it for 2 years in a row, and we'd hire a detail, and we'd get the detail officer down there. We'd get their name, cell number, whatever. I think it'd be the best thing to do is for those people on the boardwalk to get in contact with whoever's that detail officer, and you almost have to do it on a daily basis because they don't have the same guy. It's on a rotation, and make contact. Say, listen, you're the officer on duty. Can I have your pager number or your phone number? A lot of them don't want to give out their cell numbers though. And then that way they can make contact with them to do it that way. I mean, I know. It'd be great if we could sit there and say everything in our zone's a number one or number two. But I mean, sometimes I'll get a shoplifter in the store and the guy's very passive and he sits down on the floor because I tell him to sit down and he waits for the police. And it takes, I tell him if it's not confrontational, it's going to take 25, 30 minutes for him to get there. Now, if I call in dispatch and I say, this guy's going to run, he wants to fight or whatever, usually an officer's there pretty quick. So, I mean, you have to go by the priority thing. I mean,
It's all in what you say to the dispatcher, too.
Yeah.
If you tell the dispatcher, no, the guy's fine, he's not causing a problem, okay, priority
then
5. But if you say, no, this guy's off his
He's making me
rocker,
nervous. Yeah.
and then they're going to change it, and they'll
And if-
reprioritize, they'll pull somebody away from something else if they have
And
to.
if it's real scary, you call up and say, I got a problem, you need to send somebody out, and you hang
Right,
up.
and they will.
And-
then they show up really fast.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback onto what Gary was suggesting, and given the fact that we have the new head of marketing for the largest county facility down there, the Ocean Center, and given that actually my husband was in event management and operations for over 20 years, if you want to be a success, you have got to be safe. And the county has a huge stake in this. They didn't just put all that money into an expansion and meeting rooms. And it's really a small industry. And if word starts going out that the conventioneers that come to your place are not going to be safe even walking across the street through your parking garage into Dolphin Park, into Ocean Walk, that gets around. And Angela's been doing this for years, and she knows how important that is. And I do think that what Gary said is, in terms of the large crowds that you have there and the possibility of what is a seemingly civil incident becoming something that is way more than civil, it can be a hot box. Tinderbox, I think is the word, and can turn like that. And I think it is very important, whether it's the commission or whoever, but the people who make these decisions, if all of this is going to go forward and be anything other than just another one of, these things gathering dust on a shelf somewhere,
And again, I know you can't do anything about it, but you can take back to Chief Chitwood, who can take back to the city manager. You can take it back. And I know Angela can talk to people as well, that these people need to sit down and deal with this right off the bat. You know, because this is like paramount importance. You have to be safe all year.
I mean, I can assure, especially
And
this summer.
you guys, I know you do.
I'm
You do a
pouring
fabulous.
everything that I can
You
into this
do,
area.
and quite frankly, I just think you're overwhelmed. I think you're overwhelmed, and for the county not to step up, for the sheriffs not to step up, knowing how important this area is, it's basically our last economy. And in these economic times, to not protect the last part of your economic engine, that's just foolish and short-sighted. And I didn't want to put you on the spot. I know you're.
I just want one question. Just don't get me wrong. You guys, like I said, do a bang-up job.
Right.
And
You're
we're-
overwhelmed.
I mean, when 2:00 in the morning, the night of the race, when I'm driving down there, you guys were everywhere.
Yep.
But I mean, there was blue lights going every which way. But you guys, there still wasn't enough of you guys down there. That's why I was thinking, you know, the sheriffs, the beach patrol, and the city of Daytona should get together.
Absolutely.
Well, we're
and
certainly
make
not
sure-
perfect, but, you know, we're putting everything that we can down there, and what we're doing right now is working, but it's not perfect, we know that. There's a lot of other things that come into play, like we've just talked about. There's things that I just don't have control over, but of the things I do have control over, believe me, I'm doing everything that I can, you know, for that area.
The people that live at 34 South Oleander came before the board last month when I had laryngitis and I couldn't talk. And I wasn't here. Anyway, she said, you know, that there was problems in that block of South Oleander, and they have decided that they're moving back to Dustin, Florida, because of the crime that is happening in there. So we would like some protection in there.
Ms. Brown, I'll tell you that, like I just tell every other group, I went to a meeting last night, and it's the same thing when they tell you about 2714 Ridge Road. It's out of control, nothing but problems. And I look on the CAD report, and we've had one call for service there in the last 3 years because nobody calls the police. I can only help people that call us. If I don't know about it, I can't fix it.
Okay.
And I know who you're talking about, and they do not call the police.
Oh,
Or
okay.
code,
So-
I know.
All right. Well, I'm only passing on
Well,
the gossip because, as you know, we owe
I know what
30.
you're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
If I may follow up on what Tracy said too, is as the father of a 16-year-old who, you know, a couple years ago, she had no problem going over with her friends. They'd all go over to Ocean Walk and such. But I'll tell you, they don't want to go there anymore. Okay? They hear what's going on. They'd rather much go down to Port Orange Pavilion and such. And so, I mean, your local kids, I mean, and we're just a few blocks away, are like, I'd rather go to the pavilion where I feel safe than go over to Ocean Walk where there's things happening in the parking garage. You know, is it safe to even walk there? You got all those hoodlums hanging out on the street. They don't feel safe at all. And I mean, I can just imagine how that's going to be translating into attendees at the Ocean Center and the hotels and such.
Shriners.
Yeah, and to me, it's, you know, when you think about it, you see all this Ocean Center stuff. When's the last time you saw a deputy sheriff around there, or a couple of them? Okay, I mean, it's the county inviting these tens of thousands of people in, but they're providing no security.
We're also
Okay.
responsible, we also are responsible for the parking garage, and that's
Yeah.
not our facility.
Exactly. I mean, county facility, they're making the money on it, and they're not providing any security. I think we need to ramp it up. I mean, politically, with respect to the county, you know, we got an E-zone. We got to have a joint task force operation here going. That's between the county and the city to deal with things, or the city's never going to be able to support it. What needs to be done over there, and the county sounds like they're not doing anything, and we need to put some pressure there. So we just need to figure out how to do that.
And just to tag on what you're saying, is you're exactly right. We've got right now that Student Life Christian organization that's here right now. There's 7,000 kids there. They let out at 10:30, around between 10 and 10:30. There was probably maybe 200 kids who just got out, were at Burger King. And the shooting incident that happened, it was two kids that hang out over there that got into an argument with each other. One of them pulled a gun and started shooting. I don't know how somebody didn't get hurt over there. But as you say, it's a county building, and Daytona PD is policing that whole area where that property out there. We should see sheriff's deputies out there. But
I mean, you go to the courthouse and you got a couple dozen of them hanging around.
Yep.
Okay? And nobody over in
Well,
that
you go to
zone.
the beach patrol down there, and you got
And the beach
tons
patrol-
of cops hanging out down
and
there.
what the
all
beach
the time.
patrol,
And they're the-
they are in the parking
They're the
garage,
highest paid law
what, 2 nights out of the
enforcement in the
week?
county.
Yeah,
Beach
we
patrol
have
are
it
the
most of
highest
the
paid
time.
law
I think you're
enforcement
right. They
in
have
the
it 1 or
county.
2 nights a week.
Yeah, from 10 to 2, from 10 to 2 in the parking garage.
We have it the majority of the time.
Yeah.
I like what Gary said. Somehow, I can't remember what you exactly said, Gary, but making
The geographic, geographic rather than call.
maybe not use it quite that term, so the call, but making the E zone a priority, and let's not wait for the political wills. Let's start here on this board and we need to get a motion somehow to start it, but make the E zone a priority for law enforcement, for
Well,
all agencies involved.
One of the things, a couple of things that we're exploring, we could explore is, I went to a meeting in Orlando, and I don't know if the International Drive corridor down there is
Same
obviously
problem.
bread and
Yeah.
butter.
problem.
But what OPD and the Orange County Sheriff's Office do is they have squads dedicated just to International Drive. Now, of course, it boils down to money and resources and all these things, but, you know, when you come up with this E-zone area, you know, one of the things that could be explored is having a unit, a squad, detectives, everybody dedicated to policing that area only. You know, all we need is money. But, you know, that's something, because it works on I-Drive. Is it perfect? No, they certainly have their share of crime, as I learned, but they have, you know, they have officers, bicycle cops, detectives,
They've
everybody
cut it
that's
down.
committed just to work the I-Drive corridor.
I
So-
think if you actually, I'm not going to argue, but when it comes to the money, if we actually sat down with all 3 agencies involved, I'll bet you can do exactly what you want without any added cost.
might.
But like I said, it's, you know, you guys have got to get together and sit down and hash
And-
up.
and
I
one
bet
of
we
the
can
other
cover the
things-
whole area
Right.
with what we need without extra cost.
And one of the things that's come up in some of our staff meetings is the future of the CRA details in this area. Because we know, I mean, we understand obviously about the economy, so one of the things that we have on the back burner, depending on how the funding is going to go for the next year, is we have a plan in place. Finding the people, the staff, it's going to be the issue, but and several years ago, we had details that were dedicated just to police the boardwalk. So I have that plan in place. To put a dedicated squad. I mean, obviously a much smaller area to work from Breakers Park to the band shell to cover the ocean walk, that whole area. Just a small squad just dedicated to that area.
Thank you.
But of course, the first question the chief asked me was, "Yeah, that's great, but where are you going to get the people
Money.
from?" So
People and money.
we have the plan. We just need the money. So resources.
Gary?
You know, there are whole neighborhoods in our city now that are digging in their own pockets to provide additional police. Has there been any discussion with any of the merchants associations of whether or not they feel safe streets are important enough that there could be some sort of a fee based on square footage or frontage that would be it doesn't have to be forever, but to me it's as important as beautification, a safe street. And there might be some ways of putting the dollars together. I don't think we ever anticipated the kinds of problems that we're having now when Ocean Walk was first built. I know we didn't. It sort of caught us. International Drive, I-Drive, was designed to be what it is. And so they had built into some of the funding formulas money to reinforce both the sheriff and the city. It's built right into the fees that are paid by property owners. And we have to, because we have a much older city, we have to sort of back in to some of these things. But it might be worth, doing a survey to see whether or not safety is a high enough priority for the property owners there. Mr. Politis is a major property owner. He not only has Gator Gifts, but he owns the Burger King property. So he needs to protect himself against liability as a businessman, just as we do in our neighborhood, have to protect ourselves against something happening in our neighborhood. So we have modestly provided some extra funds to hire off-duty and policemen and retired policemen to help keep our neighborhood safe. I think it's the times. Let's hope this isn't ever the future, but we're living through it right now. So I don't know, Reed, whether there's been any exploratory discussions. You know, this is a tough time to ask anybody for anything, but safety, the shooting in the Burger King should sort of bring, I think, to the forefront. The editorial in the News Journal this morning, I think it's probably the first of several editorials we're going to hear, or stories. I know the News Journal is about to do some reporting on the beach side. I don't know if any of you been contacted yet. I'm sure you will be. They're going to do not an expose, but they're going to do a sort of an in-depth study of the beach side. And we know that public safety, especially with this shooting and with other incidents on the beach side, and with the special events and the impact of numbers of people, it's going to be an issue. And maybe it'd be better if this board, maybe Reed, if there's any advice we could give the city commission acting as a CRA, maybe you could help us shape it, and we could start to, on the record, make some suggestions that we think would be very instrumental in making the E-zone a reality. And I think this is one of them. I think safe streets are critical.
I think Gary's right, but I think it needs to start with the police department telling us, hey, this is a plan we think we need to implement. This is how we think we can do it. Okay? I think you're seeing the will here to try to go forward and persuade the political powers to get involved with this to make it happen. But we need you to come forth and say, all right, this is what we think we need to do. This is how we think we can make it work. A joint, program with the sheriff's office and so on and so forth. Because I really think we need to get them in the loop. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
They got too much money invested there. They are inviting the people there. Okay? And they got deputies all over the place that aren't doing squat. Okay? I'm sorry, but they're just...
Maybe the Ocean Center needs a police force,
we
and
need
it
to
will.
open a courthouse in the Ocean
It will
Center.
in
We'd have all the
time.
deputies we need. Okay?
I agree. 4 deputies just to walk in the front door.
I
Yeah.
knew I shouldn't have shown up tonight.
But, we need the concept of the plan. Then let us know how we can go about trying
We're
to get
killing the messenger.
gears in motion and, and take her from there. But I think it needs to start from,
does.
the grassroots is saying, hey, we need this. You need to tell us how you think it should be implemented. And then let us know how we can try to help get that moving and everything. And, we'll start beating up on the county commissioners or our own city commission or whatever we got to do. But it's got to happen.
Call us.
Okay.
We're ready. Okay?
Okay.
Okay?
I got to make just one comment about just where we've been and where we're going. And, when the E-zone and what it might bring is down the road, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the issue with the crime, for the most part, when you look at it statistically, it's, things have gotten better realistically. And we're always looking for those trends. We don't want anything to start backsliding. But I think an incident always brings it to our attention. But overall, things are getting much better. And what is lacking sometimes, and where we like to see police officers and people, is down there where they're visible, and the bad guys don't want to be there. They don't want to be in the bright lights, and they don't want to be around where the police officers are. They're going to watch themselves very carefully. And so having the presence and the perception of safety, whether it's our officers or the lighting and the other things that happen, are paramount. And we're making some forward steps on the turtle lighting issue, and so there are some things we'll be able to do to continue to improve it out on the boardwalk. As we get out to these other areas in the E-zone, I think it's going to take some more manpower and time and concentrated effort and other agencies and maybe the business community, but I think it's going to take some time for that to happen. And I agree, you need to carry the message forward, and I'll pass that along as well. We'll have that communication, and I'm sure some that'll probably be watching these videos will chime in as well. But it is it's an issue of perception more than anything else that hurts our business and hurts our community. It's perception, because statistically it isn't that bad, but it sure looks scary sometimes. And that's what we're addressing or trying to address. And by doing that, we're also making sure we put a cap on any real crime that may occur. So just so everyone understands, it's getting better, and we just need to apply the resource and concentrate them there, and communicate as best as we can, so we don't have to worry about a 25-minute response.
This is not on Main Street, but our friend Mr. Hoffman has moved between 10 and 15 Mexican laborers in 105 Braddock. And have you heard this report?
No, not yet.
And 3 to 4 big commercial trucks are there every night after 7, 8 o'clock. No, the people are quiet, but he's still breaking the law like he always does, defy what the law is. And I would like to see if you can do anything to, should I be telling Michael?
I think Mr. Fitzgerald is writing the address down now.
Okay,
so-
105 Braddock, you know where it is, Michael. And of course, he defies everything. And the sexual offender is living in that back apartment. And he's not supposed to have anybody living in there. And he also knows that. So,
And-
pardon?
Same address.
Yeah, same address. And actually, just one other thing, and I know this is outside where the redevelopment area is, but Virginia just made me think about it. I don't know if you've received the report yet. I know it's been turned into code a couple of times and emailed into the police, but the vacant lot at the corner of Seabreeze and Oleander, which hasn't been cleared in forever, is a hobo camp in the back corner. Every single night, several men, and it's back behind the trees. Neighbors, myself, have seen guys coming out in the morning, getting their little clothes together and all this kind of stuff. At 9:15, I'm leaving the bank parking lot at Wells Fargo. So just so it's been that in the past, and until that lot gets cleared again and gets cut way down, it will stay that again. But it is, yeah, they have the lot clearance, but it also,
take care of the rest.
and you can see from Seabreeze, if you hit a certain way, you can see some, like old sofa furniture back there where they're hanging out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else,
Thank you, Captain.
Captain?
Thanks.
Hoffman?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Now that we got them warmed up.
Yeah.
Today's presentations. Tonight's presentations.
Welcome.
Hi,
We're
how
happy
y'all?
to see you.
Thank you. Last meeting, we were talking about some of the cars that are parking in the grass in the evening. So I've changed my hours on Monday. I'm gonna be staying later.
Oh.
So I'll come in later, so. See, we'll start driving around, start seeing some of that.
Good.
July. These are the code case violations and cases that have been opened for the Daytona Proud Time. So what we're going to look at is, here's a 2011 violations were 1,494, up 50% from the year prior. It's a huge increase. We've also done 996 cases, and last year we did 930. What that shows is that the amount of violations to the case ratio has gone way up. So in other words, you're getting, for the same amount of cases, you're getting a lot more bang out of your buck. What would you say?
Oh.
That was his idea anyway. Because it's coming out and it's up 7%. And if you add both of these numbers up together, which will give you all of our cases and violations, we're up 32.3%. For the same period in 2010, we had from January to now, which is
Violations of 2,878 is what we have this year. We had last year at 1,942, up 32.5%. And our cases last year were 1,440, and cases up this year 1,623. And we have one less code enforcement. So we're down, so we're really going up on numbers.
Is the difference there more violations per property and those roll into multiple violations per case, or they're being resolved before they get to the case level?
No, what's going on is the Daytona Proud, and Mr. Berger, when I first started, explained the way they were fixing other cities were what he wanted me to do at the beginning, which is not worry about the little things, but pick up the largest amount, one case for a large amount of violations, and fix that whole block. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years to increase Grandview Drive. And then they expanded it to all of us. And it's huge. If you look at the south part where we've had the first part one of from Main Street to ISB, that whole area has just been lifted. Do you all agree? I mean, people are painting, people are fixing all their fences, all these things, and people are working together, and they're doing it as a group. So the whole area just is going to get lifted. And our next project is from Main Street north too. So we'll be doing every single property in those areas this coming month.
Are you including the properties along the river?
Every property
Okay,
is being
good.
written up. There's not one that's going to get skipped.
But my question was, you have all these more violations. Is the number of violations increasing on a per address basis?
It's increasing because there's 9 of us writing it because I couldn't have done it. I mean, you just don't have enough time.
But you don't have many more cases, but you got a lot of violations.
Right,
So are the
because-
violations being resolved before they become a case?
No. Each case is one property.
Right,
And
okay.
you can have 10 violations
So
in a
you're
property.
having more violations per property?
right.
Okay.
So in other words, we have the time, because there's 9 of us out there, and we're able to write up every single property and write them up for everything.
Okay.
So that when you come back down after 6 or 7 months of working with the people, it's lifted up. I would say, if you've got 10 problems, you're lifting it up by 10 problems. Paint, we're making sure they're putting grass in, we're plants, they're really trying very hard in that area. These are the case totals for 2009 in the same period, which were 47 for a total. So from 47 to 400, it's just huge. Here's 2010, 87. And of course, 2011, 429 cases. Plus, each one of those cases has multiple violations. Mm-hmm. So that's how you get to these huge numbers and increases. So 2011, 429, 87, and 47. So each year we've been able to increase. Board cases that are coming up. 14 North Hollywood had all these things that this was told to me that it was grandfathered in. So I went to Volusia County and looked at the sky shots for over the last 10 years, and it wasn't. So this is what it is today. It's all gone, and we'll be asking for a will fine. These signs are all coming down. This is the after.
I know right.
This is the after shot. They'll be going to code board tomorrow, and we'll be asking for a will fine because it takes too much trouble to keep doing it. It's just you put a will fine, and then they. This is the Earl Street property. Somebody had hit that wall. And so we've been working with that person, and this is what the wall looks like today.
Right.
It's all completely
Great.
repaired, pulled their permits, got it finalized, and that's where we're at.
One question, are all 9 code officers in this area? Because our neighborhood has suffered tremendously.
Well, what's going
Now-
on,
okay.
our numbers are 50%. We only have a certain amount of people in a certain amount of time. So,
But are
what
they
we've done-
all here now?
No,
Okay.
They've been doing Daytona Proud is 50% of the workload.
Okay.
And then the other 50% is back in their
It's
own,
catching-
back in
okay.
their thing, yeah. And that's what the numbers have shown.
Okay.
What are you heading north of Main Street?
north of Main Street.
This coming up, right?
When
Yeah,
will you
next
start?
month.
Next month.
About south of Solar Ridge.
Well, we don't know where we're going after that.
Be on the lookout for houses that are partially painted and need some real work on that, because they got
Every
green up here and brown down here.
Part of Daytona, well,
I won't say the address or
yeah,
anything, but
part of the Daytona Proud is that we'll take a picture of the property. Every property gets photographed.
backyards too,
No, we're
including
not
junk
allowed.
piled up.
They're not allowed.
It's a federal law. I mean, we can take pictures from the front.
How do
and
you,
if-
how do you write up violations if you can't walk around the building?
I mean,
The best they can. That's
yeah,
all I can
it's
do.
with we can walk up to the front door. We can do
What
a
if the
lot.
neighbor lets you on their property?
If the neighbors lets us on their property, there's under a 6-foot fence where I can just stand normally and see. I can do it.
When you get in down to just north of Main Street, give me a holler.
You got it.
I have neighbors that'd love to let you in their backyards.
What you have is you'll get letters from us ahead of time. And when we're out there on the street, we're out there for, many people out there, and we're working, a block each. And we'll probably do it on the same 1 or 2 days a week.
If you'd like a poster case for north of Main Street, the corner of Auditorium and Halifax has a very lovely pink house on the corner.
Yeah, I know the house.
To the east
The one
of
to the
it
east of it, yeah.
has had no power, no water for years. The kitchen is burned out to the point where you can access from the outside through the wall.
But it's in the backyard, because I've been in the front yard of the house.
It's in the backyard.
Right.
Yes, it's in the backyard. But with no power and no water, I think it's 200 or
No, I know
201.
exactly the house you're talking about, 2 stories.
Two-story house, yeah.
It's a very small property.
That's
right next to
correct.
it's a large piece of property owned by the state of Florida.
That's correct.
Mike, do the letters indicate that if someone wants to, that they can allow someone into their backyard to see adjoining neighbors that may
We
need
ask,
some-
when we go up, we'll ask people to go in. If we can go in, then they'll sign a document saying that we can go in, and we will very happily go in.
Yeah.
And we try. We ask everyone. It's not that we're not asking.
No,
we're
but I'm
asking.
saying, that initial letter you're sending out, I don't know if it addresses that concept
That's a letter
or
from the
not.
chief.
Okay.
I have, it comes out from the chief, but when we get there, we ask to go in. If you have a rental property, we ask the tenants if we can go in. We'll take pictures of the inside, and we'll use the International Property Maintenance Code, and we'll write it up. And we ask every property that we go to if we can go in their backyard. We ask of the neighbors if they'd like us to go in. If there's any problem, they'll show it to us. Believe me, we have plenty of pictures of the backyard of people's houses, and we write them up. But what I'm saying, we don't do it without their permission or
Yeah.
without someone's permission.
Look for some cooperation in our zone.
Yeah.
Anytime. And,
And one question about tenants. I mean, if they're tenants, they're supposed to be a licensed property, right?
every property is being looked at. They're writing down on the heading, 3-unit multifamily. They're,
Right.
On the heading of every Daytona Proud project gives you the address. It gives you what they saw when they got there, and it gives you the photograph of the front.
But what I'm saying, if it's a rental property, it's supposed to be licensed. If it's licensed, I mean, I have rental property in South Daytona. I'm licensed.
Right.
They don't have to ask my tenants if they can come in. They contact me, the property owner, and I have to arrange it, or I go to code if they do not get to inspect my property. That is how South Daytona does it. I've had property down there 12 years.
Yeah.
It's tough.
And you go to code if you don't get none of this one time we'll pay a fine. You go to the code board if you do not allow an inspection, and they'll run you a fine. You know, so I mean, we don't do it that way?
We do not do it that way.
I think that's one of the things they're looking at right now to
Okay.
address.
Yeah. Because
we'll
we
write
get inspected every other year.
Yeah, we'd be happy to go in and inspect.
But we the landlords have the key. The landlords have the right under Florida law to go in.
Oh, no, of course.
You know, so they contact the landlord in South Daytona, and you have got to let them in.
Yeah,
know, or-
there's nothing.
Well, of course,
Is
maybe
there
not now
anything
because they're having a problem with their code and sort of.
At one point, they were talking about
Yeah,
the
I was gonna
problem
say.
with
Get
you,
something.
right, where you get your permit and then you don't get inspected for another 10 years. So I don't know if code has been working
hasn't
on
been anything
a
updated.
change in that, or
I mean, I know we have way more rental properties in this city than they do in South Daytona, and probably every other year isn't feasible, but I couldn't imagine every third year wouldn't be.
No, I think we're taking a light version of code enforcement through this effort, so we're on that learning curve.
Okay.
And I think we've looked at Gainesville, for example, and their ordinances and.
Well, I would look at South Daytona's, even though
Right.
they have a problem at the top of the.
And when we talk
Their
about
ordinance works.
Sure, and I've done this in other communities, and to be effective in other communities, and what CRAs can ask for is a search warrant. Now, I may have a disagreement with the legal folks, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to clean up blighted neighborhoods, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way for any of these areas. There's some
Right.
beautiful houses in there, but a lot of these beautiful houses are looking maybe okay on the outside, but some of them are getting gutted on the inside, and they're historic. And what are we doing, ignoring what has been going on for the last 30 years?
I agree.
So I think it's being revisited right now. That's my understanding, and when we know more, we'll share it.
Yeah, whatever they tell me to do, we do. And
Thank
they
you.
gave us a document that says that we asked the people if we can go in, and if we didn't go in, then they signed this document acknowledging that, and then we go in a team. We don't go in by ourselves, and we will take pictures and do what we need, and that's the way we've been proceeding, and it's been working, and people let us in, and some people don't. But,
And it's been effective. It's been very effective.
Yes, it is.
I think.
I mean, you've seen the change, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions for Michael or comments? You're doing a wonderful job, and we're happy with what we're seeing out there. Because the nicer the properties get, the more rent I can collect. So keep it up.
That's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Well, you aren't competing against a $400 a month rent. If they have to fix theirs up too. So I'm in favor. The E-zone. Mr. Berger. Number 5.
Okay, number 5. This is discussion of the E-zone. You have the nice, new, pretty documents, double-sided. They're very expensive.
Read them.
So I don't think I can make extra copies of them for each of you, so hold on to them, please. I would plan on bringing them to every meeting, just to have a reference. And what we'll be doing is, and bring up the slide here on the schedule if we could. There we go. Okay. What we have is a process that started back after we received these documents. On June 13th, we unveiled with AECOM giving a presentation to both the County Council and to the City Commission. And had an opportunity for some discussion. It was not intended to be a place for action, just a workshop to ask some questions of the consultants before we went on to the next step of implementation. July 6th, just last week, the Commission voted to approve the master plan. I need to clarify what that word approved means. What they're doing in that resolution is approving the plans that you have, but not adopting them. Okay, we're approving is the beginning of the adoption process. So it's another way of saying we're committed to going forward and getting this done and take the steps necessary to do it. What are those steps? And now I've outlined some of those steps, and we'll give these in more detail as we go along. But to give you sort of the big picture, the community meeting at the Peabody is something that was asked at the Commission, that there be a community meeting. Since this is now out there, no one's really looked at this plan in detail. It's on the website, has been on the website since we received that information, and we continue to try to get the word out that it's on our front, the front of our webpage. It's not somewhere where you have to dig in. You just go to that link on the front page, and then you can read these documents online. Again, we're not going to be in the business of publishing more of these. I don't think we're gonna print more than we have already. We'll do this digitally, and people can download a PDF of it, whatever they want to do with the document. But it's important that we convey the information about this document at that meeting at the Peabody. I encourage all of you to be there, 4 o'clock p.m. At the Peabody Auditorium. I think that's a Wednesday on July 27th.
Patience.
And then also, as we move it along, I think if you read the backup in what I provided to you about the July 6th meeting, is that we had suggested that we would do a redevelopment plan amendment early on in the process. Well,
Can you put that back up while you were talking?
Yeah.
Thanks. Go ahead.
so the redevelopment plan amendment process is not a necessary first step in what we need to do. In fact, upon further review of what's the best process to use here, when we already need to do a comprehensive plan amendment and the land development code amendment, we're going to learn a lot and get a lot of information in that process. And anything we do to amend the redevelopment plan is really going to be premature. So what we can do is, as we're going along, we can look at how we might revise that redevelopment plan, and we can have that discussion. And I'm going to put this on the agenda every month, and we can begin, so we're not rushing at the end, to start looking at opening our redevelopment plan. And if you need another copy, let me know. And we're going to start looking at different ways that we can begin to implement that plan as well. So we're not just going to just take all of this time until you can see at the end, June 2012. Well, what have you done in that whole time? Just work on a plan, work on these amendments? No, what is it that we can do in the ground? The little steps of where we can make some improvements. You talked about the lighting, some of the other things we do out there to make this a more hospitable area to invest in. There are design standards that we're looking at now. We now have some assignments of staff to focus on that. We have a new person that's in our planning department that has a background in working on design standards, and so we're going to be able to ramp up that effort, because I think we were here last year talking about design standards. Mm-hmm. So it's time to get that moving, and that's a priority of ours. So you know that we're going to come back out with something for everyone to start reviewing. So there's a lot of work to do here over this next several months, and we'll give you more details as we get into that end of this month and we get into August and start the comprehensive plan amendment process. And that'll come back to you, the land development code. And these will be meetings where the public can join in the discussion. So there'll be a lot of chances to get a bite at the apple.
Reed, will the process be that you'll bring to the board some recommended changes to the plan? The staff will shape them, and then we will discuss them and vote them up or down? Is that how it, or share with me how the process would best work?
Okay. Well, there's a couple things. The planners will be working on the comprehensive plan and how we just incorporate some of the recommendations of this overlay district. And then as they come forward with those recommendations, we'll be reviewing that document and making recommendations to the planning board, and ultimately to the commission once it goes through the state review process.
But you guys will do the pitching, and we will do the catching.
That's correct.
Okay.
But you're welcome, as often can happen is you can pitch a few out there for me or throw the curveballs. The point is that it's going to be a give and take. I'm not going to necessarily cover everything you think it should cover, so I'll be looking for you all
Okay.
to take some initiatives as well.
So then the process would work, maybe we will take the staff recommendations first, see how they square with the element in the existing plan, and then the floor will be open to additional things that maybe each one of us might have, or, several of us might have, and we'll discuss those maybe at the follow-up.
Right. So we'll reach some consensus of what's important to make this plan work effectively.
It's important for me to understand the staff priorities and the city's priorities in the amendments to the plan. Very important for me to see where you're going with that, because your direction will, to a certain degree, affect what other things we might find in that section of the plan that might need looking at. Do you follow you follow my thinking?
I do.
So it's very important, the leadership that the staff brings and the degree of detail that you can bring will make our job a lot easier and a lot more fun. Because it could be a real Megillah if it doesn't work. If the process isn't set this way, it could be the Lawrence of Arabia, the conference they have in Damascus where each person speaks a different language and they get nowhere. And I'd like to not see that happen.
Okay. I think we'll probably be fairly clear and direct on where we think this needs to go, and an opportunity for all of us to agree or disagree.
I had a suggestion too in terms of getting information out as meetings come up that people might want to be involved in. I don't know why it always seems to get overlooked, but the water bills. It's special. There's always this room on the water bills, and I read the messages that are on there. Maybe I'm the only one in the city that does. I don't know, but
You are.
oh.
I read them.
But there are those of us who do, just because. But it's it is a way to just another way, because not everybody has a computer, not everybody deals with computers. That's not everybody reads the and if it's one more way of getting information out to citizens, at least trying to figure out when the billing cycles are that might coincide with some of this, to at least let people know there is a meeting, you can come to it, it's about the E-zone.
Okay, I'll pass it
Read
along
your bill.
to
I
our
think that's a very good suggestion, a very good one, because we tend to get in trouble in our city when we don't communicate well, and when certain populations are surprised by things that are happening in the movement that's already gained,
Momentum.
the object is in motion. And I think something like the water bill might be, if it's easy to, I don't know how hard it is to utilize, Reed. I
No,
don't
it's
know anything.
it's meant to be utilized.
But I would think that would cover everybody's back if we could do that in the water bill, even quarterly or
Yeah.
even twice a year, if we know what the schedule is going to be. I think that could be tremendously helpful.
Especially when I read in here, we have a population of 64,000 and 79 came to a meeting. I'm sorry, I think we should exhaust every avenue to inform people, so at least they can't come back and say, I didn't know.
Well, it's also, Carrie, it's also proper notice.
But we,
Is the water, with the water bill that goes out to every
household.
citizen be considered proper notice?
Not notice, but
there
just-
would be other avenues for publicizing. I don't think that there's a
I wasn't saying so much.
We
requirement
wouldn't
per
have-
code or per
Right.
Right.
Florida statute, but
Right.
the way we typically advertise these meetings, through.
Not everybody reads the paper,
Yeah.
It's terrifying, but it's true. I think half the people in this town do not read the News Journal any longer.
I don't.
So maybe that would be helpful,
I
Reed.
read my water bill.
Well, I think you'll certainly, I think the newspaper is typically going to get out there with an article, number one, and we'll have it on the Bright House channels, and so
Yeah.
there'll be different ways that it'll be getting across that way as well. I can't tell you, and I don't know if we'll be doing as we've done before. We've sent postcards actually to each person. That got a little expensive, but
Yeah.
we did have that practice. And we'll mention the water bill as well as another way.
I think the only reason that this sort of hit a tone is because oftentimes in the newspaper, there's a slant to the article about the meeting, and oftentimes that turns people off from attending. It's, in the newspaper, they tend not to be invitations to attend. There tends to be a spin on it, as you know. And I think if we have been getting low numbers coming to meetings that really are important about the future and the integrity of the city, that we might try something else as well, just if you can.
I'm open to suggestions on different ways.
I got a question. After June 2012, so E-zone ready for development. At that point, is that when the city starts looking for developers, or are we in the process of looking for developers now? And let me finish. Sure. What is your? I know it's just going to be a guesstimate, but how and where is this money going to come from?
It's really, number one, it's not about money. And when you have a tax increment financing, the question's going to be about maybe what are the other resources and the other partners that are going to be there. But as we get into detail about what we're doing to implement this, and tonight was not the time we were going to have that, get into the details of that discussion, but I would tell you that whether you're putting in a stormwater management system that's going to be more regional, to pave the way for making this more investor friendly, and making the other investments in the public projects, that in itself will exhaust most of any capital you have today. The way to that anything that's going to happen in the future is going to be joint venture. It's going to be private-public partnerships. It's going to be intergovernmental partnerships that are going to make this happen. If we can't have the partnership, then we can't do this alone. It will not work just by going solo. Private needs public, and public needs private. And the city and the county, as you will read in the plan, need to get on the same page, are on the same page. At least that is the way it's going to work in the future, that we're all working towards that same goal. And that what we started with the convention center, with the beach, with what we're doing at the pier, that is what we need to push forward on with our investment and do it together and figure it out. They didn't figure out all the financing and how this is going to work in the plan. They laid out some ideas, but the hard work for getting that done is ahead. But right now, between now and next June, there have already been investors that have demonstrated interest as we started even having the discussion of trying to put a plan together. So the question is, when are the people who are interested going to be serious enough to bring their financial resources or find the financial resources that are harder to find these days?
That was my question.
It's
the question.
I don't want to paint a picture that this is real easy to do.
No, I wasn't
But,
saying that, but I'm
yeah.
saying, you just answered the question.
Sure.
At that point, when do the developers finally step in and say, okay, we seriously looking at this thing? And you just answered it.
Yeah, so the opportunities are there, but these are not overnight discussions, and it takes a lot of work with a lot of people.
Hence the need to amend the plan, because we have to discuss TIF and how much TIF would go to anyone. I mean, there are a lot of unanswered questions, even with the internally generated funds in the trust fund, on how much of it can be committed, and are there categories of commitment, and do any of them require matches and things? Are these the kinds of things we're going to look at in general in the amendments to the overall plan?
Yeah.
I know there was discussion at one time about putting a cap on the TIF that could be devoted to a single project.
Yeah, we can talk about it. Again, as we go down the road here, the main thing to do now is to create a regulatory environment that makes it clear and concise as to what that plan is and how it works, so that it's not awkward and difficult, which it is today.
It's all green lights. We want to give the public the green light signal.
And we, exactly, and we want to demonstrate that we have our act together, we have our commitment, and we just all saw what happened in Port Orange, and they did a great job. Wonderful publication, put it out in some of the right places, and there aren't any takers. And when you're talking about these kinds of larger investments, the economy isn't there
It's
yet.
not there.
But the interest is there. There was interest in the project. It's just when it came down to are you ready to spend some money to start working on it? Not yet.
And there's nothing around that project either. That project is out in the middle of nowhere, unlike the E-zone, which that project is in the middle of everything.
Yeah, this is the great place to invest, and people know that, and they're watching.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, go
Tim?
ahead.
But one of the first things you said, it's not about the money, but when we got back to it, it's really about the money. And, I mean, the plan's great and the ideas and all that, but Reed, when can we get past, we talk about the investors that'll be coming and to look at things, and one of the things is people come to look to invest, to develop, they look at the area. The nuts and bolts things that we need to take care of, the lighting that we talk about, the stormwater, the policing, the code enforcement, we're tackling that. But the lighting, we've been talking about lighting since the year and a half that I've been on this board, and we've been talking about prior to that. When can we actually start something from here instead of just get reports and discuss it? When can we actually say, listen, this is what needs to be done, we need to move forward? Can we set any
Goals.
And forget about setting goals, let's set some action. Let's get proactive instead of reacting to what's going on out there. Let's get proactive and say, okay, we've got a lighting problem, let's take it, let's start doing something about the lighting. Can we initiate some kind of?
Sure, and each year we do that as part of the budget process and capital, and we've had this discussion about what our priorities are. One of those priorities was not right in the E-zone, but it's the approach there called the ISB Streetscape
Right.
project, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I agree. There needs to be an action plan, and our action plan is all of Main Street, and the E-zone is dependent upon what's happening on the way to getting here and around it. So we'll be talking about the actions and the strategy for the entire redevelopment
We're
plan.
going to open the curtains.
I guess what I'm saying is that, okay, in June of 2012, about a year from now, we're gonna, we're ready to hit the ground running. But shouldn't we, in the meantime, get the nuts and bolts together we can start working on lighting.
Sure.
We can start working on stormwater and things like that to prepare ourselves, because you don't want to. You want that stuff in place to when you're getting people, you're bringing people to the table. Just I don't know. I think we wait too long. We know there's a problem out there. Then why don't we address these? Start addressing these issues now.
Well, and we're talking about that. And with the E-zone plan, for example, if you look at what we provided to in the packet for you and provided to the commission, was that there are things that we
Short-term
suggested that we can and are doing and implementing right now to do that, besides, say, the streetscape on ISB. So wayfinding, some of the other little things we can do, the stormwater management plan, which you got to have before you can put the infrastructure in, and then you're going to start knowing what your costs are to this, because not all your costs are identified yet. And then when you're negotiating with a project that's going to potentially be bringing in revenue, and you're talking about, well, how much can we afford to put into incentivizing you, and what do we have left to complete the other part of the infrastructure that we all need, the investor needs, to make sure that you can have a great environment around the project. So typically, you're going to be building this in phases, and that's the way that this plan describes it, and that when you look at the public infrastructure and some of the needs, that project has to, that investment in that project, both public and private, has to support the infrastructure that we're talking about to get it to the level that we want to get it. In the meantime, we can do some of the small things just to make sure the lights are working, if we can raise the level of the lighting, that we do those kinds of things that are lower cost. And that's the message that our commission as well has been, I think, pretty clear on, is what can you do in small and incremental ways to do something now? So clean it up, make it look better. Light it up. Do those things that are important for just quality of life right now, not a year from now. So we have that message, and we're taking actions out there, and again, I'll report on some of that as we go along here today.
Specifically, could you report at our next meeting on the light level, increase of the light level, and lighting some of these trouble areas, just as sort of a test case to see how this process would work? That is a modest one. There's a long-term saving over 5 years with LED lighting anyway. That's probably budget neutral, as a matter of fact, over a 6 or 7 year period, depending on what kinds of lights you get. But that seems to be a no-brainer, and we know we need it. Now, even if you're going to redo all of the lighting fixtures, and the plan shows a lot of physical changes on the street. I think Mr. Kostadakis has a point that we really need to put our money where our mouth is as quickly as we can, just to suggest that change is possible in the Main Street positive change continues to be important in the Main Street redevelopment area.
Sure. Okay. We'll look at that, and again, we're at very limited resources once you get past commitments for the pier and the expansion of Breakers Park, where there's some land available, and when that money is committed, there's a very small amount of money left in the trickle. There's some, and I will share with you when we just got the reports from the assessor on those numbers, but it's a significant drop again in Main Street with the revenue side. So and
but
we are
agreed. I don't think it needs to be our funds all
Right.
the time.
No, you're
to
right.
Be used, because I mean, if it's county property and we know what needs to be done, we say, county, this is what needs to be done. We believe these lights need to be put in. Let's have them step up.
Yeah. Well, again, the first step is identify what we can do, and I know our folks over in Engineering Public Works, I have been experimenting with some of the different LED lighting,
Yeah.
and I'll just catch up with them tomorrow, and we'll find out.
I don't know if there's one thing that they've thought of with, are you going to, I'm sorry.
No, I was just looking at make sure, I can run over there and have a discussion with them. Okay, I'll do that.
And just quickly, and then I want to get to my comments, but on LED lighting, we are a place that freezes, and we have freezes. And one of the problems that they have found in more northern cities that have put in LED lightings, LED will not melt the ice that's on the light, and so they have to actually send crews out to clean off the lights, so you actually can see the lights. So we are in a freezing zone, so we do need to be careful about the type of lighting that we put in, but be that as it may, I think, to me, two of the looking at these related short-term actions that actually are already undertaken that support this, but the key is on pages 15 and 17 of the research analysis that was provided. And it goes to what Dave was saying, that yes, there's all this interest And it says on page 15, the initial responses to the mixed-use RFP in this area were significant. However, by September 15th, 2008, when proposals were due, no responses were submitted. And then it goes on to say that two of the problems, one is CRAs can't borrow funds the way they used to. But actually, a big thing is the land development code, plan development process that leaves everything up in the air. And that is key. That's a long-term thing, but rewriting our code is key because you're not going to get developers in when everything is negotiable. And we are in the process of getting into phase 2, but there's another year of finishing that. And then the second was the city lacking this master plan, which is what we're working on for this, because you have to not only have your plan, but you have to have a way to implement it, which is what our code is. But I also think what points to the difference in what's happening in the economy, when I looked on page 17, the recent activities relevant to the E-zone study area. The Boardwalk Hotel property, well, that owner's bankrupt. The Gateway Hotel, which talks about, a 60,000 square feet of restaurant, 19-story, all they're building is the marina because there is no private money to do this. That's been in front of us. The Convention Hotel, that's dreaming. But the things that have been done or in the process of being done are what the government is doing. Auditorium Boulevard, the Daytona Beach Pier, the historic district surveys, and going forward with Surfside in the Land Development Code rewrite. And I think obviously not only doing these small now things that will make a difference, but continuing in this direction we're doing, so at least we'll be positioned. So hopefully when things do start turning around with the economy and with money and with lending, which it's hard to be very positive about that these days, but still, hopefully, we will have done everything we can as a community to position ourselves to take advantage of that. And I really think that's what we're doing here. And I'm happy to see this move forward and to see us have these kinds of discussions. And I do think that these Main Street plan amendments, I do think we need to look at particularly the financing because it is always about money. Always.
Shall we move on? Anything else? Shall we move on then?
Let's do that.
Number 6,
It's not about money.
Before we go to that, Reed, could you just real quick, because you didn't mention it real quick, an update on the pier where we're at?
Yeah, could I bring that up in the redevelopment update here, which we'll do in a
Projects
minute?
update, which is coming down.
Okay.
Sure.
ISP Street State.
Yeah, we'll get, just so, this will be something I will keep on our agendas as well each time, so that you're up to date. This is your first update is going to kind of take you through the schedule because we met with the engineers. They're under contract, CPH, and they're coming out of Sanford, and they also have a presence here in Daytona Beach, and they're really bringing a lot of resources to bear on this, and they're very committed to keeping on a schedule. We had the kickoff meeting last week, or this week, I guess it was Monday. It's all blurring together. The survey work has already been completed. You may have seen survey crews out on in this area, both downtown and Main Street. And I want to make sure people understand that the ISB Streetscape project is really two parts on either side of the river, and that the Downtown Redevelopment Area Board and the Main Street Board will both be looking at their sections, and that there will not be a convergence there of these two. There'll be separate documents, they'll be running separate meetings, and one may run at a different set of timing, so that Beach Street and what would have been proposed in the Riverfront Master Plan, that met with some resistance, and when we initially proposed actually getting serious and moving that to some kind of development. So there's going to be different issues on each side of the river, and there's certainly, as you've all kind of took kind of the lead role over a year ago to put that RFP together and say go forth, that we really need to do something on this as you make that drive over the bridge, and visually have something that turns your eye straight down and towards the beach. And I can tell you, I'm kind of excited about what I got out of the meeting the other day, and some of their thoughts about how to maybe give that sense that you're on the beach side, and the kind of plant materials and the design that they might look at it incorporating. But I'll leave that to them when we get to the opportunities for a public meeting. And I think I have on the schedule that September will be the first opportunity for a public meeting. I think that's the 30% design, and that means it's concept plan. November we'll get into the final design. The February will be the final plans. It's really the working drawings at 90% period of time, and then moving that project forward to April, get the construction bid opening started by July. There should be the opportunity, if we wanted to start then, in time. When you start the construction is going to be a whole issue in itself about when to begin. But the earliest that they expect would be July of 2012 to start construction. But we may, for the reasons of tourism and everything else, be picking the schedules that work. Because one of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to repeat some of maybe the past experiences of disruption that just kills everything. This is about being, and engineers have, the firms, the people who practice the construction trade, now are getting more creative on scheduling and making this much more business friendly on how you do it. It's not perfect, but they can keep businesses open and keep them, the people who are coming to those areas less frustrated and more directed to getting to the front door of each of the businesses. So it's not about shutting the place down. Okay, I need to say that because it gets out there.
I remember when Harley Davidson would set up at the Ocean Center, and when they did the streetscape in front of, in the 200 block and in front of the Ocean Center, they did that during like. That was when they did that's when we hit there.
Yep.
This past year, when they repaved Earl Street and Aura, they did it during the Daytona 500 when we had they closed Aura to repave it while we had the people coming in and trying to catch the shuttles to go back and forth to the Daytona 500 during that weekend.
Well, hopefully we've learned a few things. So I just want to tell you that at the end, it'll be August 2013. So it's pretty far out there. And provided the world doesn't end in 2012, we should get it done.
I was going to say, by December 22nd, it's all over anyway, at least 2012.
Okay.
Reed, in 2003, the Independent Main Street Redevelopment Board, working with an independent South Atlantic Redevelopment Board on the beach side, developed a draft plan for ISB. Have you seen that? It talked about width of street,
Yes.
that whole thing. Is that going to be made available to the consultants, or do you think that's out of date now?
Well, we've had that discussion about that and setbacks and
The scale of buildings.
Scale of
adjacent.
buildings, but I think in terms of where this project was going was that simply is going to be not part of the plan.
It's a different plan, okay.
It's a different plan, the land use, and in
Okay.
fact, this plan is, I would tell you, it's more motivated now about not waiting for that land use plan that we just can't seem to
Okay.
get completed. But I can tell you in the Clarion rewrite, one of the things that we're looking at is having a place where we can, perhaps not at the time of just doing the rewrite for the sake of getting the code done, but to have a placeholder where we can put that, well, I think we call it the RDB 9
Right, right.
quarter, and so we still think there's a lot of validity to that, and it has been
Okay.
opened up, and the dust is off, and
Okay, good.
we're looking at it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Reed, slightly related, but does anybody know what this aggregate is they're putting on the bridges and why?
So, a rumor is that it's a sealer.
Yeah, well, that's Big John. They told it it's a sealer? And why are they putting it on, though? Ah, that's what I was suspecting. In other words, they're getting corrosion and spalling going within the new bridge system, and they need to try to protect it, so they're putting this whole epoxy with an aggregate on top of it.
Right. You would too.
Well, I just was curious why they were doing it. It's very expensive and looks nice, but, oh yeah,
I didn't hear, what?
1.2 million, he says, for all the bridges? Just two.
Well, it's good to see some state resources coming to our bridges. So it's a plus. Okay, could I move on then to, if it's okay with you, to
Thank you, babe.
the project update? The prohibited social services you dealt with last month, it went forward to the planning board. They took your recommendations as they were presented, so they were accepted. So that moves on. There'll be on July 20th an opportunity to consider that at the commission level next week. So if you're interested in tuning in on that, there'll probably be a lot of discussion about social services in general when we get there. ISB property improvements, that's really the area that we purchased recently and assembled some of the property down near the base of the bridge on the south side. If you haven't really taken a look at what we've been doing there, I just want you to know that we've been and still are fixing that property up. We're not prepared, nor can we afford in South Atlantic to spend money on the demolition of those properties. So while we're holding it, we are spending what little we have, or the city is assisting, to make sure that those properties not only look good, but even have a little something of interest. We have some banners that have been placed in the windows. We have the, for a while now, in the, what was the massage building, the pink building, and now we've got the golf shop's information in there and a display. So
Looks a lot better.
yeah.
A lot better.
So it's still rough around some of the edges, but we're our main task is to try to keep those areas from getting broken into and keep it safe and secure. And we have other public properties around there, as you know, with the library and so it's a place where we're going to continue to see what we do until we can get something there. I can tell you that things have really dried up in terms of some of the interest that we had maybe only 6 months ago. So we're resetting and looking for prospects again. We're not ready to do an RFP, but we are working with the state, looking at how that we can work with them on the nice park facility that we've spent a lot of money on landscaping. So we're considering even the possibility of assuming that land and that facility and making that a part of the overall project without taking away the beautification of the things we have, but to incorporate that as a part of the overall development. So that's where that project is. Breakers Park, we've got some issues again with the fountain the other day, and we're trying to to work through those issues, and the pump's not working right. But we're working on the land acquisition element, and we're getting, I feel, real close. And hopefully we can package the last 2 parcels we need that go over to Harvey and get this done. There's a real focus there. And part of that all relates back to the pier and whether or not we provide some parking that's related to that until we redesign the park as it's shown in the E-zone. So the pier itself is ground zero for us, and working that and committing our investment right now there. That's it. Making sure that we can get a viable restaurant in place. Now, I can't say much more about the pier because that's not something I'm involved with directly.
So you don't have a completion time on?
No.
Estimate on
I think whatever you've read in the paper probably is the best you have now in information. I believe there's a commitment to try to open the pier up later in the summer here, and but I'm not going to speak for the others who are trying to get that done. I just know that that opening the pier itself and letting the public on is now a goal, and the discussions continue with the Joe's Crab Shack. So that's where things are at.
Can we get for next month an update on just the pier? I mean, I'm not worried about Joe's Crab Shack and all that, but where we're at with the pier construction costs and all that through next month at this meeting?
I mean, where the final cost?
Where the citizens are in Daytona Beach as far as what we paid for the pier and where we're at as far as construction and all that goes.
Sure,
An update.
How much
on
money
where
has
we're
gone
at with
into
the
it
pier.
so far?
Money
I was
and-
gonna
money
say.
and when is it going to be?
Sure.
Be ready for Joe's to come in?
How much
or
is the
anybody
Main
to come in?
Street Redevelopment Trust Fund placed into
Yeah,
that
that's
Right.
the
since
question.
beginning?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
That's the question.
right.
Yes.
Okay. I want to clarify that,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
all citizens, but
No.
okay. I will.
I would like both. You know, how much redevelopment money's gone into it and the other sources too, so we have a total.
Yes, I mean, I'm a total what we've spent on the pier
Okay.
and how much longer it's going to be before they're
You
done.
including acquisition?
Well, okay, we know that's 1.3, so.
Hey Reed, I have a question about the new neon lights that are on that casino building. Are those? Is that how it used to look historically, or
Is that temporary or?
yeah? Is that
The red lights are up there because that's the only turtle-friendly lighting that we've had approval on. So as we move along, I think we can look at other ways to do this, but right now we have red lights. And I know that connotates other things.
And it's not
how
historic.
does Joe's Crab
And it's
Shack
not
feel about
historic.
Thank you. It's not historic.
It's not historic.
No.
But I can't imagine Joe's Crab Shack wanting to operate out of a building that looks like that. It looked kind of nice the other night out there, at the fireworks, but
Right.
that's not their image. You know, they hang shrimp. I mean,
Giant
lobster
shrimp.
buckets everywhere and stuff. And so I don't know. Is that just kind of a temporary measure to make it? not
I
look
don't
so
know
bad?
the
And-
answer to
I
that.
think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and again, you can interchange different kinds of LED lights in those sockets.
Right.
And LEDs are interesting. You can, I think, part of the strategy of where we go forward here is that for the longest time it was either all or nothing. Whether there was a turtle season or not, you were lighting everything for the turtle
As if
season,
there was a
and you
turtle.
couldn't turn a switch on and light it up afterwards. Now the thinking here is, and particularly with LEDs where the technology allows you can change the color, you can change the intensity, you can do a lot of things you couldn't do otherwise. So I know that they've got some bright minds there on the lighting side, looking at the pier and
Good pun.
th-
Bright minds.
Read.
attention.
On the turtle thing and all that in the core tourist area,
talking to your microphone.
Do we have anybody in the city or in the town, maybe it's Hardy Smith, can go to the state Fish and Wildlife and start lobbying for some real changes down there, knowing that there hasn't been a turtle nest there in the last 50 years, knowing that 1% of all turtles worldwide nest on the east coast of Florida? I mean, we're seem to be dancing around a flawed science, and nobody seems to want to really tackle the problem. And is there anybody in Daytona Beach, the city of Daytona Beach, that can go up to the Tallahassee and sit down and have a real conversation with somebody up there and see where we can go with this? Because it's crazy that we can't light up a tourist area, and we're killing tourism over there. I'm sorry, I've been there 30 years in the tourist business, and it's going downhill every year. And one of the reasons is the turtle issue, and we haven't seen a turtle nest there in over 50 years.
Excuse me, we have, as of last week,
Don't tell me we've had a turtle nest there.
a turtle the size of my refrigerator laid on its side just north of Seabreeze. No, a live mother turtle laying eggs, walking back out to the ocean. I'm sorry, my husband, myself, several neighbors, early, 1 in 50 years. There is now officially a turtle that has been back here, and she was huge.
Yeah.
Huge. I mean, she was big.
Dave, you know that
I'm sorry, she
that the lighting on the beach and the turtle issue really is all tied up with the county's take permit.
Yeah.
And they don't care whether there's a turtle there or not. They've made a commitment to close the beach, and with the closing of the beach comes the restrictions on the lighting. And
Gary,
this is,
I understand. I've said it 5 years.
I know, I know you know it better than any of us here. So I don't think it's even a rational decision anymore. I think it just is. It's a condition that is. I don't like it any more than you do, but I think it's so involved and complicated in agreements and commitments by the county that didn't perhaps weren't sensitive to the city and businesses who are trying to operate on the beach.
But I think there's been a lot of progress.
There has been progress.
There's a lot of work being done, and I would say
Yeah.
that the county and the city are working very
Yes.
cooperatively together and making progress, and that Tallahassee is in the loop, and there's discussions going on. So whether we're talking about Washington or anywhere else, we're more positive, been in a long time about moving forward and having some
And the
local
technology is better today than it was
Right.
5 years ago on how to do this thing.
Right.
So I'm with you, but I don't think it's as easy as finding the right person and sharing with them the facts of the matter, whether there's a refrigerator-sized turtle in Seabreeze or not. I think it's a real Megillah, and maybe, Reed, the communication and the progress hasn't been really communicated effectively because we haven't seen any changes as a result of it yet. There have been modest. There have been some changes, I think, in where the lights can go and the shape of the lights. But you're right, it's one factor that's killing business on the beach.
Oh, sure.
Well, you know, and it seems to me that the lighting issue was to keep the lights off the land so we don't, because the turtles are supposed to be drawn to the moon and the ocean and all. Well, if they're out on the pier and it's lit up like a Christmas
they'd
tree,
go out to the beach.
you'd think it would draw the turtles to the lights and into the water, away from the beach, and they would want that.
It's not rational. I mean,
I
this
know,
is
well,
not a rational science. This is almost spiritualism here when you get into the rationale that backs up many of these decisions are very hard to apply the scientific method to.
Well, the canary in the mine is, in
Yeah.
our case, the Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
And it's still there. And we'll see how things move, because it's sort of the lightning rod for this issue, too.
For permissibility there, yeah.
Right. So we'll but so far, keep your fingers crossed. We've been making some good progress. Mr. McKittrick is point on that, and he's done a lot of work, and maybe he can come here some point and bring you up to date on.
That'd be a great
that.
idea.
Okay.
May I ask what's happening to the library there on Vermont and
Cornelia.
Yeah, right. What is, I know, if I understood correctly,
Mhm.
the county has turned that back to the city, am I correct?
That's correct. I can't tell you about any plans in terms of the readaptive use and what's going to happen there. I know there are some issues with the people who owned it, but it's also, I think our primary interest is to see that we complete the landscape project. We took some of our funds
Then
from
aided-
South Atlantic and applied it there for a volunteer group that
Terrific.
is supposed to be doing the landscape. There's a landscape plan the beautification board's looked at, so it's not done yet. And I think I had about 3 or 4 inches of sand on the sidewalk the other day, and asked them to reset the erosion control and some other things while they're getting the act together to fix that up. But you can see we've done some work on it and on the roof, and so that they're, we're trying to take responsibility for these facilities.
If not, you're gonna get written up.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And
Daytona proud.
as I have been
Yeah.
by Mike. The retail market study, if I could just jump into what we're doing there. Did any of you follow the downtown board's progress and with Mr. Bob Gibbs? We've asked him to look at some other areas. Thank you. And the Seabreeze and the Main Street E-zone area, and what's in these recommendations. And in Midtown, looking at some areas there as well, we wanted to know if we could have Mr. Gibbs evaluate that, because there's some, it's more efficient for him. It costs us a lot less money to get him back and replicate some of the work. And some of his initial work may be to say, it's not even worth my time or your money to look at some of these things. So he's going to have some sense of that before we would engage him in any other service. But I wanted to let you know that we're intending to try to approach him on letting us know what kind of a scope of proposals he might have for this area. So that's in progress. The kind of related to that, and when we're talking about these zones, what should we have here? What kind of retailers and what kind of confidence can we give them using these reports that they need to get excited about this? Going to these conferences where the shopping center people, but it's more than that, it's developers, real estate, government officials, the cities, the communities, all kind of come together in one place with anyone from Walmart to the little guy who's just opening up his first franchise. And try to get some interest to come into the area. And retail's been way off. These conferences have not been well attended, and now they're really gaining speed. Most of this is still, down at the basement level, but there's a lot of interest again to start doing deals. It's not just Family Dollar, and so. This is a good place to have these discussions and network and start putting your shingle out on what's going on. So we're collaborating with Team Volusia to have a booth there, and then we can go out individually as we free up our time to go out and talk to these different developers and let them know about the E-zone and some of the other projects that we have in our community. And so that maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years later, they're going to give us a call. And they're going to come back, and typically you don't walk out of those places with a deal.
When and where is that?
That's down at Kissimmee at the Gaylord Palms.
When?
It's about the middle of August, about the 13th or something, I think. But that's a very productive place. We actually had a presence. Commissioner Shelley and Jason Jeffries out of our office went to Las Vegas to the big international show and made a number of contacts there. So we're just, again, trying to build those relationships. And and you got to be out there to make something happen. And you know, I don't see the real estate community out there because they can't afford to get out to these things. So many communities are pulling their resources and showing up. And we wouldn't be there with a booth if it wasn't for Team Volusia. So hopefully we'll see something coming out of that. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, Reed.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from our board here on this subject before we go on to the public comments? John, do you want to please set a 3-minute clock on that?
Make it 2.5 because he always goes over.
Actually, I don't always go over. Thank you very much. All right, several things. One, Gary, we did go through a lighting thing a year and a half ago. The board apparently thought $800 a year was too much money to spend out of $11 million. Two, police, when Barbara Whitehead started the Surfside Village years ago, she went into the police department to find out how many police officers we had and where on the beach side. At the time, we had 2 police officers. One was assigned between International and Seabreeze. The other one was assigned for north of Seabreeze and south of International. If there was a problem on the mainland, the police officers were pulled, so we had 0. We had a time we put in $1 million from the CRA to get 5 police officers, 1 lieutenant, 4 officers, and Denny Jones decided that in the case of an emergency, they would pull them out to the Midtown area, and so we got police officers for 1 hour a day, and 10 hours a day they went over to Midtown. And the audit said they can't do that. All right? We've had an opportunity to have more police officers now than we've ever had before. All right? They've wanted, this board has asked for police officers to go up and down Main Street. We've had a problem with the police officers that are assigned to the boardwalk. They sit at Ocean Walk Villages, and that's all they do. The other end of the boardwalk never sees them. All right? You have problems in the Breakers Park with lighting. There's still, 5 lights out now. So you don't have the lighting there, and what little lighting you've got is out. You could have more police officers if you asked for them. You have a right. The beach side has half of the value of the entire city. All right, the beach side. We are a donor city to the county. They've even admitted that. So when you ask for state officers, they used to be at the garage. They are no longer there. But you should demand. Okay, we are giving you X amount of dollars, like Volusia Forever. All right, we're putting in $28 million into Volusia Forever, and we won't get a penny back. All right, Echo, we put in money, we're not getting our fair share back. We put in half-penny sales tax. Most of it is raised in the city of Daytona Beach. 40% of it comes from tourists. We have the most tourist industry in all of the cities. We don't get that money back. All right, we are donating to everybody, and unless you guys ask, and I'm asking you guys to ask, to demand that we get the state patrols, that we get beach patrols in the area. They have, 66 lifeguard beach patrols.
Yeah.
And what do they do with them? I'm sorry, at night, there's 2 of them.
Seconds.
I know, I can tell time. Thanks for interrupting me. But it's something that you have to realize that you've got to ask for, and I'll stop.
Can I make just one comment, because I know Captain Huffman's not here, but Captain Huffman has actually made some changes, so we don't have officers congregating together anymore. And if you do see it, give them a call, because we're saying, okay, that again, unless that's a special detail for the businesses over there, I don't know. But for the people on the boardwalk, again, for the people that are on the boardwalk, that we used to have some issues there. That's changed, and personnel will change if that kind of thing is going on, unless they're coming together for an issue or something out there. So again, with community policing, you're trying to move people out and get a lot of visibility and move around and communicate with the people that are out there and make them feel that it's safe, and that the people that are out there, that the officers are friendly, and are going to help you. Whether it's directions to where you want to go, where to eat. I mean, you know, there's, and if you've ever been out there with Chief Chitwood, you know, it's most friendly guy you'll meet out there, unless you're the bad guy.
I was saying, unless you're the bad guy.
Saturday night, he was riding his bike
Unless you're the bad
with his
guy.
with his uniform on
Sure.
in that area.
So again, if we've got something still going on, we'll be addressing that again.
Any comments from the board? Gary?
Yeah, I thought I would take a moment to introduce myself to several members who I have not had a chance to work with yet. I know there have been some questions asked about why I would be interested in joining the Main Street Board again, and I thought I would share with my colleagues. I started my work with the city as the chairman of the Economic Development Advisory Board when we developed the tax abatement program and minority hiring practices program, and served as chairman 2 separate times for 2 years each. I'm just rotating off now the Board of Adjustments because I cannot serve on this board as well as the Board of Adjustments, and served there for 2 years, learned an awful lot about the city. I was vice chairman of the Main Street Board in 2000, 2003, and at that time we worked with the Main Street merchants to develop the Urban Land Institute study, which I think is a very core and important document that defined the E-zone. Was the first city document that actually used the term E-zone to talk about how we could ramp up the value of Main Street and the surrounding areas. Many of you know I was picked as the chairman of the right-sizing committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee, that actually merged the Main Street Board and the South Atlantic Board. That was one of our recommendations to streamline and downsize the city. On the county, I started out as on the Historic Preservation Advisory Board. I've been on the Cultural Council 3 times, a total of 7 years. And I was the first chairman of ECHO and worked very, very hard with 3 other people in our community and a political action committee to pass the ECHO board. Now, I disagree with John. I think Daytona Beach has done amazingly beautifully through ECHO. Your Breakers Park is only one of probably 10 major projects in our city that are a result of the ECHO program. And I think that there are, Reed, some real opportunities in the E-zone to work under the umbrella of the ECHO program, and I'd love to look at that with you. Also, in my last year as chairman last year of ECHO, we passed the emergency historic purchase program that brought Lillian Place into the public trust at no cost to a citizen in Daytona Beach other than our ECHO contribution that goes to the county. Many of you know I served on the State Florida Arts Council and both the Division of Historical Resources and the Division of Cultural Affairs, and I represented Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, Alabama, and Louisiana on the National Museum Board for 3 years. I've been retired the second time since 2006, and trying to retire in 2006. And I'm doing some books now, and you've probably seen some gifts to organizations from the Humane Society, to Stetson University, UCF, a whole bunch of them from a charitable trust that I'm involved in. And I have a huge interest in the potential of what we could do in the E-zone and how the Main Street Board can move forward at this particular time. I think the recession gives us some huge opportunities to get ready for a turnaround. And I thought myself that maybe I would like to devote a year or 2 to Main Street Service to see if I could help move the process forward. That's why I'm here. And there were 4 commissioners who liked that concept and nominated and voted for me. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for your time, Gary. Yes, Angela.
Welcome, Gary. Just wanted to say, unfortunately, this will be my last board meeting as a board member. Taking the position at the Ocean Center will require me to step down, but It's been a really pleasure serving with all of you and developed some really new friendships, which I know will carry on. But I won't be a stranger. I'll still be attending the meetings. But it's really been a pleasure serving. It's been a great experience for me. So thank you.
Well, thank you for your time, Angela. We appreciate it. Tim?
Yeah, two things. I'm going to miss you on this board. I think you have been it's been wonderful working with you on this board, and you just bring such a great perspective, and I know it's going to only help the Ocean Center, which is going to help the city. And the other thing I think you left out, Gary, I think the Josie Rogers house is sitting there because you worked with the city and you found that the city was going to demolish it. And someone said, call Gary. And he put his hands on some state money, and we have that here. The first woman mayor, we have her house here because of that. And the last thing I wanted to bring up, it's my understanding that the reason that this board meets at 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock was to accommodate Ms. Humphreys and her store closing since she's no longer here. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but the other evening boards meet at 6. And I personally would like to meet at 6 rather than 6:30 and sort of get us out of here even a little earlier in the evening. Okay, motion that this board move its meeting time to 6 p.m. on the second Wednesdays.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Good.
We did something.
We did something. Okay.
Anything else?
That was it.
Thank you, David.
That just, Angela, we're gonna miss you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
yeah.
everything you've done. Nice to get to know you, and good luck with the Ocean Center.
Angela, we'll miss you too. Gary, great to have you.
Work number, your new work number.
Thank you for being here tonight, and Gary, I called you the other day and they said that we were happy to have you on the board, and Angela, we're going to miss you. You have done a tremendous job, and we didn't always agree with your votes. You would sometimes go one way and we would go another, but we still respect what you said.
You're right. You guys have been great, and like I say, I won't be a stranger, and I'll email you all my new contact information so we can definitely stay in touch.
And the
How many
comments I've
years
gotten
did-
about the Ben show, the friends, the concerts this summer have been
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
How many years did you and I serve on hotel motel board?
Right, many.
Yeah.
Can't even count that many. Well,
It's been the band show events, they've been great. You've been working really hard for this
Yeah.
summer events, so.
well, it's time to, at 8:43 p.m., we will adjourn. See you next month.
And